This is Anthony Padua of Ratrad, and I have His Excellency Bishop Pierre Roy with us today to just discuss just various different topics. Your Excellency, I'm glad to have you. For your time to come on. If you'd like, we can start us off with the prayer, and we can begin.
Certainly. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for sinners now and in the hour of our death. Amen.
Saint John the Baptist,
pray for us.
Saint Joseph,
pray for us.
Our guardian angels,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Your Excellency, I think I want to say it was March we had this interview. I think it's been a few months. I feel like it's been a few months.
Yes, I've looked it up. It was 4 months ago.
Okay, wow. So 4 months. What have you been up to since those last 4 months? I know that when we first talked, you were getting another priest.
Yes,
and getting your seminary started and so forth. So if we can share a little bit about that.
Right. So the seminary has started in September last year. So it wasn't really the start of the seminary, but we were in the first year, which is now completed. The first year of seminary, we follow the course of the SSPX. So the first year of seminary is a year of spirituality. So we studied spiritual life. So this has been completed, thank God. We have one seminarian and one novice who is studying to be a brother, and I was giving also this same class to a novice who is a nun with us as well. So I had 3 students this year, and so yes, we received also Father Mello from Brazil. He's still in the process of getting his visa, so we're praying and hoping that he will be able to stay with us, but we have until the month of October to get that done. So all of this is underway. Also, what else? I went to France for a visit at the invitation of a few priests. There in France, I visited a church in a chapel in Brittany. It's actually the largest Sedevacantist chapel in France, Father Roger in Brittany, in Rennes, the city of Rennes. It was nice giving confirmation, obviously getting to know a few priests over there, Father Fuentes. I had met Father Fuentes in Brazil at the Episcopal Consecration, but he's working with Father Roger, Father Rigoberto as well. And also then we moved, I was traveling with brother, we moved to the south of France, close to Spain, to Father Riou, where I gave confirmation as well and met Father Riou, who is an old friend of mine. So nice trip to France. And as I said, we're preparing for the second year of seminary, hoping to get maybe a few more students who have contacted us.
That's interesting. The church in France, the priest there and so forth, how did they come about? Like, I'm not. Are they? How did they contact you, or what was your relationship like with them? And
yes, so these priests, well, especially Father Roger in Brittany, was working with Bishop Dolan before the passing of Bishop Dolan, and the situation was a bit more complicated with the succession at Saint Gertrude because they don't speak French. Whereas Bishop Dolan spoke French and Spanish, etc. So for them, it was convenient to get a francophone bishop who could address the people, etc., more easily, have a more normal contact with them. So they contacted Bishop De Silva, and it was decided that I would be visiting them and taking care of them. So this church in France. Father Rio is a friend of mine. I've been in touch with him since my departure of the SSPX, because both Father Pino and Father Rio, with me, the three of us were kicked out, I would say, of the resistance because of being non unacum. They had been in the resistance for a few years, but I was just trying to join, and so we knew each other because we shared the non unacum position. So I've been visiting him a few times as a priest since 2016 in his house there.
How many? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So as soon as he heard that I was consecrated a bishop, he did ask me to come and give confirmation at his place. I think Bishop Stuyvelt from the IMBC in he's from Belgium, but he's united to the IMBC in Italy, was the one giving confirmation before, or at least once came to give confirmation. So
how many excuse me, how many chapels are out there in France that was it just the one major? I know you said there was large one, but that you gave the confirmations with, or that these priests are part of?
There's quite a number of chapels in France, many independent priests. There's not much unity, unfortunately. There's no bishop living in France taking care of them. So there's a lot of small chapels, but everyone is kind of working on his own. So Father Roger has a few chapels that he serves with a few other priests. Then there's the group of Bishop Sanborn as well in Brittany as well. Father Dutertre, Father de la Chanonie. So there's a few priests there in France as well. But I would say I wouldn't be able to say how many chapels there are in France, but there are quite a number. But mostly everybody, most of them are working independently of each other as of now.
Okay, so that's neat. So your apostolate, it's expanding out there to France to help out some of Bishop Dolan's priests that were working with Bishop Dolan.
Right.
Okay. And then also you said Bishop Father Mello is there. Is he currently there, and then he has to go back and extend, or is he?
Well, it will all depend on the decision that is made by the authorities here in Canada regarding his visa. So if he gets his visa, he's probably going to go back to Brazil, but for a short time, just for vacation, something like this. Sure. But hopefully, if he doesn't get the visa, I think he will have to go back to Brazil. Wait a few months and then try again to come. So we're expecting we should hear about this hopefully in the month of August. So he's here as a visitor right now.
Okay, so it's yourself and Father Mello, and then maybe you said a seminarian or what, and
a seminarian, a novice, and the sister. So there's 5 of us. So it's growing slowly, but steadily. Yeah. Well, we had to adapt a little bit to the ceremonies of Holy Week. That's a big. So we did the Chrism Mass with a few little clergy, but we still needed to have the holy oils. We sent them to France as well. So it was necessary to review the liturgy quite a bit, especially for the Holy Week. Other than that, things have been peaceful. We do work on the church. The usual business is going on. So we're making the roof of the church right now. So, I'm still the parish priest of this place here, Moncton. So even though I do have some more duties to do, it's my work is mostly continuing to take care of the same group of people and visiting the missions. It's good to have the help of Father Mello, for example. When I went to France, it was very great to know that a priest is behind, and if somebody is dying, I'm not going to miss the opportunity to give the last rites, etc. So for me, having a priest is very precious, especially if priests are asking for help, if they're asking me to visit them. It's good to have a priest who stays behind and is able to take care of the flock while I'm away.
I would think it'd be nice too, just to have someone you can confess to if you need.
Right. So that's a big plus too, for sure.
Yeah. just to be able to, or to share
Yeah.
ideas off of and just kind of fellowship with, you know.
Right. Well, thank God, God has always provided somebody for me to be able to confess. But obviously, having him just be besides, is even better for sure.
Um, I want to talk just about some different things that are going on. Maybe I thought it'd be kind of interesting to hear your perspective on it. I know maybe it's a little bit old news, but not maybe. What's your thoughts on what's going on with Viganò being excommunicated and all that?
Well, it's very interesting, but first of all, it's been confirmed by very credible sources in France. I mean, people who have talked directly to Bishop Williamson that Archbishop Viganò, Bishop Viganò, has been conditionally consecrated a bishop by Bishop Williamson. So I consider this to be certain, and I think that's very interesting because we have there a member of the Novus Ordo hierarchy who has come to the conclusion not only that Francis is not the Pope, but also that his own episcopal consecration is doubtful. You know that our Bishop Viganò has been ordained in the traditional rite of ordination, so he didn't need to be reordained a priest, but he, was compelled by his by his studies to consider that his episcopacy was doubtful. And I think that's very interesting because we've been saying that for so many years. But now we have somebody who has been consecrated a bishop, quote unquote, by John Paul II. So it's not anybody, by John Paul II, who chooses to be consecrated by Bishop Williamson. Knowing what Bishop Viganò has said all along, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not affirming this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has contacted one way or the other the SSPX to be consecrated, conditionally consecrated by them. I don't see why you would address directly Bishop Williamson. I think he went to Bishop Williamson because, and again, that's just a personal thought. I'm not affirming this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's been a contact between Bishop Viganò and the SSPX. And we know that the policy of the SSPX has been lately to refuse conditional ordinations. So it's more and more a pattern that we hear everywhere, that priests approach the SSPX, are asked to be conditionally consecrated and are being refused. So I don't know for sure, but it's interesting that he turned to Bishop Williamson to get this conditional ordination. Now, what Bishop Viganò has said, especially on June the 28th, I think is very interesting. So some people have their doubts, and I can understand it. They say, oh, he might be somebody who is playing a role and so on. But I don't see at this point how what he's saying right now, especially regarding Francis, the Vatican II, even the predecessors of Francis, he's becoming clearer on that topic, and we've seen a progression in Bishop Viganò. I don't see how he could be playing a game. So now I'm not saying that he's not confused still over certain things. The situation is very confusing, and he's coming from very far. So I would at least give him the benefit of the doubt, and I don't see how the Vatican, at this point, I don't see how the Vatican could take advantage of what Viganò is saying. I think it's rather an eye-opener for many people on the situation of Francis. So very interesting development, and hopefully, we have to be careful for sure. We have to keep our eyes open, but hopefully what he will do and say in the future will confirm a real conversion. And again, the fact to approach not any bishop, but a bishop he's known to have been a controversial bishop, let's say, for his declarations on a certain community, is no little step. It shows that Archbishop Viganò is not too much about what the world thinks at this point.
One of my I don't know, my problems or issues or whatever about this whole consecration, and if he is, if it seems pretty confirmed, so I'm glad he has been. But why do you think they're not just coming out and talking about it, or at least confirming it, so that so all doubts will be, like, make a public statement?
Oh no, that's definitely a problem. This has to be done. Hopefully, it will be done in the future. I don't know. I don't have an answer to this question, but I definitely we cannot say that sacraments, especially the sacrament of Holy Order or sacrament of marriage, are private things that do not affect the common good of the church. Now, there has been, the church would allow in certain circumstances secret marriages or even ordinations going on secretly, but this has to be under very specific circumstances, and I don't see how this would apply to the situation of Bishop Viganò. But I'm suspecting that he will speak about it at some point. It seems that he's waiting sometimes for the right moment to say the right things. So hopefully this is going to come. But yes, I would agree with you that this is a problem. It has to be declared publicly.
Yeah, I think it'd be great because it would at least bring the conversation out about the new rites of consecration ordination that I think many even within the SSPX are just maybe aren't even aware of.
Right.
That there's actually, like, for instance, I remember I was in the SSPX chapel priory where I live. I mean, it's not near where I live, but in the closest one where I live, I noticed that they had a priest, only because someone uploaded a video of them doing the mass there. They had a priest, and I didn't recognize him. I'm familiar with who the priests are there.
Right.
And I looked him up, and he was a Novus Ordo priest who was pretty much did Latin mass primarily.
Right.
And I was like, well, so in the comment section, I asked, hey, has he been conditionally ordained, or like what's going on with who is it? Like, who conditionally ordained him? Has that happened? And they were like, don't, what a ridiculous question to ask. And
right.
if he's doing mass at the SSPX, then he must be good.
He must be valid. Yeah.
That's
I remember being at the seminary in Econ, and there was a Spanish priest who spent a year there. They allowed him to say mass privately, and all of a sudden they almost forced him to be reordained. It seems that he didn't want too much to be reordained, but he just by the pressure of the priest there eventually accepted to be reordained. And so this was a conversation at the seminary at the time. So we're speaking 2010 or something like this. So yeah, there's a change there as well. In the past, there was no question. A Novus Ordo priest was reordained, and now it's the principle is that it's valid, and so therefore, unless there's a very scandalous thing that happened during the ordination of a precise priest or bishop, they will not reordain. Yeah, that's the way it is. So it's good that Viganò, as we say, would bring about this question. That's a big thing.
Yeah, when I did the interview with Bishop Altamira, he talked about this issue about the new rites of consecration and how they had changed their opinion. Like I was always under the impression, that the SSPX had, let's say, doubts about the new consecration rites. Like they had but they weren't willing to. They weren't always going to say it's always invalid or whatever, but that it's doubtful maybe, or depending on who does it or performs it. But what Bishop Altamira was saying was that he was taught they were invalid where he was at. That they were.
Yeah, I can say Bishop Altamira has been ordained a priest in the SSPX before me. When I was at the seminary, so we're speaking 2005, 2011. We were taught, and it was also a different seminary, so that might change a little bit. We were taught that it was doubtful, but doubtful. When we speak of the sacraments of the church, doubtful would mean invalid. It means we have to consider act as if they were invalid, and then therefore give at least a conditional ordination.
And another thing that His Excellency mentioned when I interviewed him, and this was he mentioned that he was only familiar with where he was at in Argentina and Colombia. And maybe it was different in other. Maybe they were taught maybe different other places, but he mentioned, and this relates a little bit to Bishop Williamson consecrating Bishop Viganò, is that he was saying that the SSPX resistance has a similar view to the SSPX regarding the new rites of consecration, and I was very surprised by that. I thought for sure. I thought the resistance had pretty much the same view as sedevacantists typically had on the new rites, but he was saying no, but they're willing to do it. They're just more willing to do it.
Right. Bishop Williamson is more open to do conditional consecrations and ordinations, but the official position of the resistance is very similar to the SSPX. They're just a step behind. It's not. They don't question the principles of the SSPX. They're just a step behind, and eventually will move in the same direction if they continue in this way.
So I'm guessing that I'm assuming Bishop Viganò clearly had his doubts about the new. If he to do that, he clearly had his doubts. Right. I'm wondering. I just really wish they would just come out and talk about why they did it, and and Bishop Williamson could talk about why he's willing to conditionally ordain or conditionally consecrate or whatever.
From what I've heard, it seems that Bishop Williamson says that it's up to Bishop Viganò to it's for him to declare it and to present it. So he's done what Bishop Viganò was requesting from him. So we can question all of this, but it seems that this is the mindset. He's waiting, and he's not willing to push Bishop Viganò into making that declaration, but we'll leave it to him to speak about it. So there might be reasons that we don't know also behind all this, so we have to be patient and wait.
I know.
But it's normal that as long as people don't have a declaration, at least an explicit declaration, that they would consider Bishop Viganò to be a doubtful bishop. I mean, there's so many people who could say, I've been ordained by Bishop Williamson. Well, show us the proof,
Yeah, it seems like it's as the rumor mill goes, seemed pretty confirmed that took place, and you seem pretty confident. What was I going to say? He seems like he came out as sedevacantist. Are you familiar with? Does that seem like what I haven't watched all the news about him, but it sounds like he sounds like
he's now saying clearly that Francis is not the Pope. There's no doubt about it. So he's a sedevacantist with regard to Francis. Now we don't have clear declarations regarding, but he still in his June the 28th letter, he was saying basically that all of them we should question the authority of all of them, starting with Paul VI. So that's a progress on his part. He's clearly denouncing now not only Francis but also the ones the conciliar popes. So it's a progress, but I think it still has to be clearer. But give the time to the runner.
What are your thoughts on him? Let's say like the SSPX kind of condemning his actions or not supporting his. Are you surprised by that, or are
Yes, I think he's disturbing the chess game right now. So there's a few players that are not very happy because they have held the positions for quite a while, and all of them would like this kind of personage to defend their positions, say the same as what they say. And Bishop Viganò comes out with a different position, a different viewpoint. He's clearly embracing our position. And this is disturbing for them because it accuses them, like Bishop Viganò has said such things such as whoever is in communion, no Catholic worthy of this name can be in communion with Francis. well, they declare themselves to be in communion with Francis. So, and the whole world is listening to that. Bishop Viganò has a great audience. There's a lot of people who are interested in the Viganò case. So obviously they had, and also, Bishop Viganò sided with Archbishop Lefebvre. He invoked the name of Bishop Lefebvre to defend his position and his condemnation. So for them, it was a big no. No, you can't use Archbishop Lefebvre to say that your action is similar to his, because then we're losing control. We have somebody who is still alive and could say a lot of things. And if people associate him with Archbishop Lefebvre, we're losing control of the narrative. So obviously, I can understand that it's not a comfortable position for them to see. But he defended himself, and he said, Bishop Lefebvre, according to everything he said in the past, would definitely not recognize Francis as being a pope. And we've heard people such as Bishop Sanborn saying the same. How could Archbishop Lefebvre in 2024 think that Francis is the vicar of Christ, that we owe him submission and obedience, and it's impossible. This man is pushing the New World Order, is pushing the LGBT agenda, he's been pushing the vaccine, he's been pushing all of these things, and transgenderism and what want you. And we would have to believe that this is the sweet Christ on earth. I don't think Archbishop Lefebvre would have fallen for this. The true respect to his person would be to think that he couldn't fall for this.
Yeah, you mentioned that he's upsetting their chess game. I'm kind of curious. I think it's I wonder if they're trying. Maybe they have a different. Maybe they're having a different approach to how to deal with this issue in a way that's different than the set of Vacantis, or is that just am I being naive? in like maybe let's say maybe we're fighting the same battle, but they're going about it in a way that's stealthy and whatever, and we're more upfront and in their face, or is that?
Well,
off on that.
Unfortunately, human pride is there, and it's very difficult for us to unite into in the truth and in reacting to the Vatican II Church, because people have adopted the positions. They've written documents for 50 years defending their position, and it seems that many people today don't really care. What they care about is defending their position. I will tell you a story. When I went in 2017, I went to the Episcopal consecration of Bishop Zendejas in the USA, and I didn't realize at the time that I wasn't invited because I was non unacum. So, but I just heard the news. Bishop Zendejas is being consecrated. Everybody come. We need to support our bishops and so on. So I said, well, I'm a priest. I'm trying to work with the resistance. So let's go there to support Bishop Zendejas. But it was clear that my being non unacum wasn't accepted. So. Father Ringrose, who is a priest, an old priest working there in Virginia, I think
so,
took me apart and told me about Bishop Williamson and about the position of the resistance. He told me, I know what you're going through. I know why you're being put aside. And I will tell you one thing, don't lose time discussing with these people, because they're not seeking the truth. So he's really told me this, Father Ringrose, he told me they have chosen a conclusion, and all they care about is finding the premises that will bring them to the conclusions they have already chosen. And I think the thing is true for the SSPX. Obviously, they've chosen a conclusion, they've chosen an explanation of this crisis of the church that fits them and allows them to stay in a comfortable position, because they can say, oh, we're still recognized by what is considered the Catholic Church, but at the same time we're resisting this Novus Ordo Church. So it allows them to be in between. So all they care about is finding the premises. So if you come into the game as Bishop Viganò and you upset their premises, then their conclusion is threatened, and their position of comfort is threatened. So that's what I see. I don't see them as necessarily being evil and trying to destroy the church or anything like this. But as a matter of fact, their position harms the church very much today. But it might not be malice on their part. It might just be human pride and human comfort. You know, they don't want to. It's uncomfortable to change a position that you have to change. You have to review everything. You have to convince everybody to follow you in the new path. And so it's hard to expect a conversion to the right position from them until something major happens. I think that will allow everybody to follow, the right position.
Along those lines, I remember having discussions mainly online with we have these discussions in real life.
Right.
But I was having this discussion about the SSPX, and their bishops are getting older, and they have less of them now than they did when they first started, and their apostolate is much larger than it was when they first started, in 88. And like I don't have ill will toward the SPX. I don't want to see them fall apart and die off. I don't want to see, I definitely don't want to see them bring in Novus Ordo bishops, because that would be the death knell, of them. I don't want to see that happen. So I'm curious. I'm like, I would like to see, what are they waiting on? Why had they not consecrated new bishops? Their bishops are getting old. It's been how many years?
Right.
And the response I get from people is they say, the only people that care about this issue are those who are outside of it, or outside the SSPX. The people inside the SSPX aren't concerned about it. What are your thoughts on that? When I hear that, I'm like, why are they not concerned? They have to be. I think that's a normal thing. I don't know. What your thoughts on this is?
Well, in every chapel of the SSPX, it is clear that there's a blind following blindly and giving 100% trust. Most people will have this disposition of mind, and they're taught to have this disposition of mind. So I'm not surprised that people are not worried. They just think, well, they're going to do the right thing at the right moment, which I hope they will do. What are they going to do? I don't know, but it's very difficult for me to imagine that they would let their 3 bishops die and replace them with Novus Ordo bishops. If some people say they will, but I can't imagine how are the faithful of the SSPX asleep enough to now accept bishops who have been consecrated in the new rite of ordination, when Archbishop Lefebvre did his episcopal consecrations as a survival operation. A survival operation would not have been necessary if there were other ways to get bishops to consecrate his priest. So I don't see how this is possible. I think they will consecrate at some point. I think they're waiting for the permission of Rome. If they don't do it now, maybe it's because they don't get the conditions that they would like. So they definitely are in conversation with Rome about this. But maybe Rome is presenting some candidates that they don't agree upon, or something like this. And worse than worse, I hope and I think they will eventually make a step. But it's hard to know, because all this so-called progress that they've made towards a reconciliation with Rome would then be annihilated. So I don't see them not doing it, but I don't see them at this point doing it without the permission of Rome. So I think Rome will grant permission. Francis is surprising all the time, and I think he will grant permission at some point. I don't see how, the SSPX, again, I don't believe too much in the malice of most of them. Maybe some of them who have infiltrated it, maybe at the head of the SSPX, who knows? God judges the hearts, but I don't see. I think the SSPX has its role to play in the present crisis of the church in the eyes of the modernist, because it represents something that still keeps people attached, maybe in a lighter way than the FSSP or other groups, but still keeps people attached to the Novus Ordo. So certain people would not be comfortable with the FSSP. They need to be gathered into a different group, which is SSPX. So I'm not saying that it was the intention from the beginning, the intention of Rome of having this group, but they have it there. And now the authorities of the SSPX have manifested many times their will to have an agreement. Rome knows that the SSPX wants to be united to them. So now they can use them, because of this. If they knew that the SSPX didn't care, well, first of all, the SSPX would consecrate their bishops, but now they play with this. They know they're willing to be recognized. Therefore, they will necessarily use the SSPX to gather a certain group of people into remaining attached to the Novus Ordo. The only ones they can't control at all are those who are completely despising the authority of the Novus Ordo hierarchy. These are the only ones they don't have control upon. So on these, they will try to work by dividing us, keeping us in small groups, nobody working with anybody else. So we have our own problems, but I don't think we're being used, though, against the church.
I kind of get the feeling that, and this is I don't have any evidence for this, but I kind of get the feeling that I would think that the priests of the society have to have, in some sense, some kind of doubt regarding these new rites of consecration and ordination. I think there's got to be, probably in the back of their mind, there's some kind of doubt, and I can't imagine them either allowing, just say, a Novus Ordo bishop, like Francis says, how about this bishop? He's conservative enough, and they'll just accept him in to be part of the society to ordain new priests. I find that hard to believe too, but I think they definitely would want to consecrate somebody within their own ranks,
for sure,
and continue the lineage that way. I think they're,
but the SSPX is making little steps with Rome. That's the strategy of Francis. Francis says, we don't need too much discussion on doctrine. There were doctrinal discussions under Ratzinger, but with Francis said clearly that he wasn't too much interested in doctrinal discussions. For him, what was important was caminare, walk together. So they've received this Bishop Wunder. Now that he's dead, I don't think this was part of the plan, but now that he's dead, they're going to bury him besides Archbishop Lefebvre, as if he were a hero of the faith, when he never condemned Vatican II, never condemned the new Mass, etc. He just retired. It is the mindset of the SSPX that whoever is good with them is a defender of the faith. Whoever is not attacking them, whoever is not rebuking them is a good person. So I don't think Bishop Schneider, Bishop Wunder deserves to be buried next to Archbishop Lefebvre. He wasn't the same personage at all, and we would have wanted to see him clearly condemn Vatican II, the Novus Ordo popes, etc. At least hold at the minimum the same position as Archbishop Lefebvre, but we didn't see that, and yet he's considered as a hero of the faith. And someone who goes too far, like Bishop Viganò, well, he's being despised, and he's new to this battle, so he doesn't understand all the ins and outs of it as us who have been here for so long, and so on. This is the narrative, this is the discourse. He's new, so he's going too far. He lacks prudence, and so on.
Do you think it's possible with Bishop Wunder that they would have done like a secret conditional consecration of him? Do you?
I don't think so. I don't think so. There's no point. There's no point. No, the point is to recognize. Well, how can you reconcile with Rome without recognizing at least the validity of their sacraments? This is impossible. This is impossible. So obviously they will have to stop reordaining priests, stop reconsecrating bishops, even though they never did it, I think, but not reconsecrate bishops. Stop giving conditional confirmations, recognize the nullity of the marriage nullities given by Rome, and so on. This will all have to be accepted, and it's already done, at least in great part, because there's no way you can reconcile with the Novus Ordo without considering them priests and bishops and popes. What's the point of reconciling, recognizing the authority of someone who is just a layman? It doesn't make sense.
I'm sure somebody's gonna. I got as people that are with the SSPX that watch the channel, and they may be wondering like, why are you talking about the SSPX so much, whatever, why are you talking about? But
right.
to be honest, because they're the largest group, and I actually don't want to see them go in any kind of like. I want to see good for them, to be honest. Right. They were influential for me too.
Right.
Come to tradition as well. So if it got
I owe them a lot myself. I owe them my priesthood and my upraising as a child, as a teenager, etc. So many of us owe them a lot. So obviously we all hope, are hoping that something good could come out, but we have no choice but realizing. And so the SSPX, they're offering opportunities to go to mass, to receive the sacraments everywhere. So I think it's important to remind people of the dangers, because people could fall for it and then be led astray with time, be led more astray than they already are back into the Novus Ordo one way or the other. If you're not being told, for example, that the Novus Ordo sacraments are doubtful, then you're going to receive sacraments from the Novus Ordo, and that could harm your soul quite a bit. So I think we have no choice. It's like, why are you always talking about the Novus Ordo? Well, because there's a problem and we need to point it out. So the SSPX is a problem, not as much maybe, but there are definitely problems that we must fight.
That's right. Yeah, they're large, they're influential, and it's good that they need to be. That's my main. I got other issues with them,
right?
But that's my most issue, is that they recognize these false rites.
I guess that during the time of Arianism, bishops and priests were talking a lot against Arianism, and the semi-Arians and those who were doing compromise with the Arians, they had to be addressed. What can we do?
Yeah. So I guess maybe in all a similar, but it's all kind of similar vein. They got the Francis doing the Latin Mass bans, the banning of the Latin Mass. Is that something you've noticed, or what are your thoughts on Francis supposedly going to ban the Latin Mass? I don't know if he is or not, but that's what it seems like what the rumor is.
Well, it seems to have been a false rumor. First of all, because it was supposed to happen on July the 16th, and in the deception that we are going through, I think this would play a good role, playing that game that these Novus Ordo priests who say the Latin Mass have not been reordained, are approving Vatican II, are recognizing Francis as a pope, are the enemies of Francis, when in reality, again, I think these people have their role to play. I think the Novus Ordo at this point just despises their real enemies, don't pay attention to them, don't want them to be known. Like I'll give you an example here. In Moncton, obviously they never speak about me. They avoid carefully mentioning the mission here. Why? Because we are their real enemy. But when it comes to an FSSP priest visiting, well, they'll give him the basement of a church to say his mass. So they will allow him. Why? Because he's not the real enemy. So they will play this game that, oh, they should give him a better church. They should give him they should promote his mass and so on. And they don't do it. Well, in this way, it appears that they're fighting against him, but I don't think they are. In reality, they're just using him one way or the other. And obviously, Francis doesn't want the Latin Mass to have too much visibility. So there might be a part of this, because some people might be led from the diocese and Latin Mass to discover our existence and then go in and so on and see the fullness of the problem. So yes, that he'd be willing to restrict it and to keep it low profile, I would understand. To be willing to suppress it completely, well, he would throw a bunch of people in our direction, and I think it would be surprising. I don't know what strategy this would be, but would have to make sense of this. But I don't. So I don't think I might be wrong, but I don't think it will happen.
Yeah, it seems like it wasn't. I mean, I've been out of that world for a while, so but it doesn't seem. I know when they first did the ban, or they put out Traditionis Custodes, the local bishop in Monterey County got rid of the Latin Mass here.
Yes.
Here we had a priest. There was a priest from the Institute of the Good Shepherd. I think he was French. I think he was a French priest, and they just booted him out. I think he moved him and he went somewhere else, another state.
Right.
So they're but since this other rumor coming out, I mean, I have no idea. I don't know if anything's barely been affected or changed. There's not many diocesan Latin masses where I'm at anyway.
Right. So, but it feeds the narrative that it's Francis against the Latin Mass, when it's the Novus Ordo against tradition. It's a different. The battle is different. It's a battle mostly about faith, but now this game is and it gives the impression that there are still so many people in the Novus Ordo who are fighting the good fight. So banning completely the Latin Mass made sense in 1969, 70, because they wanted to annihilate it. But today they know they won't annihilate it. It won't be possible. So what their plan would be to keep the Latin Mass goers into their Novus Ordo church. That's definitely, I don't see.
I think I think you're right in that way, because when you talk to people that would go to, let's say, the Latin Mass, the diocesan Latin Mass, or even like the FSSP for the most, I think they would side with the Novus Ordo against people like us.
Right. We should not underestimate the deception that is going on. The game that is being played is very subtle, and we shouldn't downplay and think that everything that appears to the outside is what is really going on. I think there's more to it, and they create these false oppositions between two kinds of Novus Ordo priests at the end of the day.
Not to continue bashing on the SSPX, but you're familiar with the YouTuber, or I don't know, I'm sure he does more than YouTube, okay, but Kennedy Hall. I think he maybe writes articles and other things, but
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he on Twitter not too long ago, he was talking about. He mentioned that the canonizations, at least the current way they do canonizations, is not infallible. Maybe the old way was infallible, but the new way, because they changed something, it seemed like it's not infallible anymore. That was the gist of it. He was putting on in his tweets, and I just felt like we should just talk a little bit about this, like that.
Well, yes, I think this is ridiculous, because in making these Novus Ordo saints, the Novus Ordo is asking the faithful to render worship to certain people, that whether you like it or not, you cannot invoke the process of canonization in order to deny the infallibility of canonizations, because the church is not only infallible in the process of canonization, but also in the daily worship of the saints. So if the church could from now on propose to your veneration, ask you to, people who are actually in hell, ask you to kiss the holy relics of, the relics of somebody who is with Lucifer at the moment, say mass in his honor, also pray the divine office in honor of somebody who is into eternal damnation. That makes absolutely no sense. It is against the infallibility of the Catholic Church, the ordinary magisterium of the Church. It is something that makes absolutely no sense. So the only way, it reminds me of another story. When I was at the Episcopal consecration of Bishop Zendejas, I spoke with one of the priests there who was attending. So I'm speaking of a resistance priest. And as soon as I started mentioning this question of canonizations as being a problem, how can we, accept the canonization of people such as Mother Teresa, now Paul II, and so on? Well, he told me outright, canonizations are not infallible. And he was speaking of all canonizations, not only those of modern times, but all the canonizations. So I said, wait a minute. I said, Father, wait a minute. So you're telling me that actually Saint Teresa of the Child Jesus could be somebody who is not a saint, who is not in heaven? And he said, yes, that's what I mean. And I said, so you're telling me you could be saying mass in honor of somebody who is not in heaven? And he said yes. And so I continued pushing him because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I said, so when I say mass for the mass in honor of Saint Teresa of the Child Jesus, I could actually be venerating somebody who is in hell. And I could see then that he was becoming white and very, he didn't know what to say anymore, but he nevertheless said yes. So
Hey.
I quit the conversation. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. But it shows you one thing. It shows you that if you're trying to play a game with the infallibility of the Church, then you're going to lose the faith altogether and become a heathen. You're going to. And Bishop Lefebvre said that in one, I think it was in 1986, in one of his sermons. Bishop Viganò quoted that in his letter of June the 28th. He said Bishop Lefebvre was speaking in 1986 only to seminarians, only to clergy, but he told them the following, and I heard that myself in listening to his conferences of Bishop Lefebvre. He said, we will have to address with the faithful this question of the Pope. Otherwise, people will lose the faith. And they will lose the faith. It doesn't mean losing the faith doesn't mean that you become an apostate. It's enough to deny one of the truths of the faith in order to have lost the Catholic faith. So yes, if you start denying the infallibility of the canonizations, you are losing the Catholic faith. So again, Bishop John Paul II, Balaguer, Mother Teresa are not people who are just undergo a process of canonization and then you put them in the closet. No, they do exist now and forever in the Novus Ordo Church as people we should venerate, people whose relic we should kiss. We should bless people with their relics. So no, you're not telling me that a church who would canonize questionable people can be the church established by our Lord Jesus Christ. Otherwise, you don't have the Catholic faith.
It would seem to me blasphemous to say
Absolutely.
that somebody like St. Anthony of Padua is in hell.
Well, obviously, it is blasphemous.
Like what? Or could be in hell. It could be in hell. I don't know.
Right. Well, there's no doubt about it. It is blasphemous, but it is also blasphemous to say the Novus Ordo Church is the church, but their canonization, but it's not infallible. So you're telling me that a reality, something that is the church, is not infallible in its canonizations and in the veneration of its saints and so on. So yes, obviously, it is blasphemous.
To Kennedy Hall's, I guess you could say, credit. He didn't say, he said the new way of doing things makes it in, not that makes it any better, but at least not saying what
Right.
That little priest
Right,
was
right.
that's
But this other priest was going much further. I couldn't believe what I mean. God knows that I heard that. There's no doubt. And I quitted the conversation at this time. I just thought this was too much. But I saw this. I'm hoping that this priest wasn't really believing this. But I saw that he would rather. It's frightening because I saw that he would rather deny the Catholic faith rather than to tell me, okay, Father, you've got me on this, you're right, I have to correct my ways. No, and that's scary because it means that some people could do the same. Lots of people could do the same. If you don't like the truth, well, enough to correct yourself, well, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, that was when I was making my journey, you could say, from it to tradition. That was one of the issues that really convinced me that there's, among other, that Francis, can't be a true pope, is when he canonized JP2.
Right.
And I renewed. I was like, at this point, I was like, there's something wrong. Obviously, something wrong with JP2 if he's praying with these.
Right, and is it necessary to remind Kennedy Hall that Saint John Paul II excommunicated Bishop Lefebvre? So we have there a saint of the church who, well, no, he says that it's not infallible. Well, obviously, he has to say that, but then nevertheless, either it is infallible or it is not, and if it's not infallible, it's not the church. But the way out for some people is saying, well, it's as if a reality like the Novus Ordo Church could some days be the Catholic Church when it pleases you, when it says something that sounds Catholic to you, then it is the Catholic Church. But when it says something that you think, but you become, at the end of the day, you become the teaching church instead of the teaching church. That's the problem with this.
Yeah, I think people need to just realize that if they're watching this, that canonizations are infallible. Infallible proclamations of the church that these people are to be venerated, and I don't think we have the option to say I won't venerate him. Like I won't look at him as a saint.
Absolutely not. No.
We have to consider them saints.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to consider somebody who has been canonized. You have to consider as somebody worthy of veneration.
Yeah, and to say no, that person is not a saint would be to go against the church.
Well, can I be then free to decide certain days to say the breviary or not to say the breviary because I don't agree with the canonization of this or that saint that's in the breviary? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, absolutely no. Maybe what can relate to what we've been talking about with the SSPX bishops and so forth is the role of a bishop today in our context.
Right.
Talk a little bit about.
I think it is important and an important question because I think this question is becoming more acute as we see the Novus Ordo falling apart. People would have waited for years for something good to come out of the Novus Ordo. I don't know, the election of a good pope and so on, but it's becoming clear that this institution is completely infiltrated, and that it's not going to produce a good pope. It's only going to perdition. It's only going to destruction. And this raises the question, where today are the legitimate shepherds of the church? And it is a big question. I think it's an important question. So there are some people who say that the Novus Ordo bishops are the legitimate shepherds of the church. Then I have only one thing to tell them: well, go to the Novus Ordo, go and unite yourself to the legitimate shepherds of the church, and submit yourself as the assentiment of your intelligence and of your will to the teaching and the orders given by this Novus Ordo hierarchy. Go celebrate the LGBT community with them. So do follow their leadership, because one of the three conditions to be a member of the church is the profession of the true faith, then the sacraments of the church, receiving the sacraments of the church, and being submitted is the third, being submitted to the legitimate shepherds of the church. So certain people will say, the true shepherds of the church are to be found in the Novus Ordo. Others will say they are not to be found in the Novus Ordo, and they have disappeared from the face of the earth. Well, who is a legitimate shepherd today? Well, nobody. Well, I think we know that this is against the faith. It's against the indefectibility of the church. So it cannot be. And some people are led to believe this because none of the traditional Catholic bishops are diocesan bishops. Obviously, there's a crisis at the top of the church. So there's no pope to tell us, okay, you're going to be a bishop, first of all, and you're going to be the bishop of this diocese. So obviously we're left without jurisdiction over a particular territory. Yeah. But I think this doesn't mean and there's many authors especially Dongrea, French monk who in the past spoke about this very interesting book on the divine constitution of the church, that inherent to every bishop is a certain kind of jurisdiction which is used in situations of necessity. And I very much believe in this. I believe that having received the episcopacy by the decision of other bishops, we have to take care of the flock which is entrusted to us. Either there's two possibilities. Either the Novus Ordo hierarchy is the true hierarchy of the church, and in that case we are not, because we are acting against them. We exist against their will. Or we, one way or the other, are the legitimate shepherds of the church, and they are not the legitimate shepherds of the church. So I see very much the role of a bishop today, not as a half episcopacy, that you would be limited to simply giving the sacraments, the sacrament of confirmation and the sacrament of ordination. Some people defend that, and it's very much the position of the thesis that basically we are sacrament providers. But this never existed in the church. It never existed that bishops be simply sacrament providers. And all of those who defend this position actually act in a way that shows that they're not simple sacrament providers, but they also teach with authority. They tell you what you have to believe in order to save your soul. They tell you, they will guide the flock that's gathered around them, and they will sometimes even deny you communion if you go to this or that or other group. In other words, I'm not here to discuss their decisions, but I'm just saying they act as if they had the full authority of our Lord Jesus Christ, and I do believe they do. Because it is necessary that there be shepherds in the church today to guide the flock. There will always be, the church has been very clear about this, there will always be, the divine constitution will always remain the same and will not be extinguished. So it is true that we don't have jurisdiction over a particular territory as long as there is no pope, but it doesn't mean that we have no authority whatsoever to make decisions for the flock that gathered around us. If you look at the history of the church, bishops preceded dioceses. They existed before the existence of dioceses. You would most of the time, be established as the bishop of this or that city, but the clear limit of your territory wasn't established, and it's only with time, and the conflicts of jurisdiction between bishops that eventually all of this was clearly established, either by local councils or by decisions of the Roman pontiffs. But I think it's very important, because if we're saying that the legitimate shepherds of the church are not in our midst today, in the midst of tradition, then we're saying that we're not the church. We're not the church of our Lord Jesus Christ. We're imposters. We're people who are not, the true shepherds of the church. So some people will invoke, and they invoke Pius XII, or rightly so, to say that Pius XII has said that there's no jurisdiction without the intervention of the Roman Pontiff, and this is true in normal circumstances. But I think if we look at the history of the church, it is clear that this delegation of the Roman Pontiff has not always been explicit. Very often in the first centuries of the church, there were bishops who were unknown to the Roman Pontiff, who did not know the Roman Pontiff themselves because of distance, because of difficulties of communication. So I think there must exist something that is more implicit in times of crisis when recourse to the Roman Pontiff is not possible. There has to exist in the Church, this implicit, tacit agreement of the Roman Pontiff. As a matter of fact, we traditional Catholic bishops are the one who lead the flock, which has remained faithful to Christ and to the true faith. So I think our role is certainly not a role to dominate with excess over people and so on. Our role is a role of charity, especially in our circumstances. It's really, I think God is asking from us to take the head of the flock and to show the way to heaven. So I see the role of a bishop, first of all, like this: the shepherd. Bishop is a shepherd. He's not so much a doctor. Yes, he has to teach, but if the resume of his role is to be a shepherd. In order to be a shepherd, he needs to know. He needs some knowledge. He needs to be a doctor to a degree, but he needs to be mostly a shepherd, which is the one who makes decisions and shows the way, shows the path to the kingdom of heaven. And obviously he will help himself he will surround himself as much as possible with priests who will help him in doing so. So another role obviously is certainly to prepare to form priests for the church, for the local church he has to take care of. So definitely the formation of priests, building the church where he is, building the church. That's very much what the role of the bishop is, and the role of the priest, as much good as they do, has always been subordinate to the role of the bishop in the church, because the priest can only do so much. He's not the one who can give the divine life. The divine life, the source of the divine life, has to be in the bishop for local church. Like always in dependency with the sovereign pontiff, at least implicitly. But the source of life, the source of grace, the source of teaching, all of this is found in the episcopacy, which is very important. Some people today act as if we could we don't care what the Pope says, we don't care what the bishops say, and basically all we need is a place where to go, so a priest who says the Latin Mass somewhere in the woods, and we're good to go. But the problem is that this crisis has been lasting for 60 years now, and who knows how long it will still last. And even those among the priests who have been the most reluctant to attach themselves to a bishop, many of them have over the last few years attached themselves one way or the other, at least a form of collaboration, because it is a necessity. The church cannot live without bishops. So I think it's very important. It's a grave responsibility that we have. We will be judged very severely. Obviously, we have to be aware of this. Our role is not a game. It's something to take very seriously. But it is very important, very essential to the survival of the faith.
Your Excellency, it sounds like what you're saying is that the bishop, the traditional bishops who've been consecrated, they're as you said, they're not just someone who provides sacraments, but it sounds like you're saying that they have a real sense of jurisdiction, like maybe a supply jurisdiction. Like in some sense, like a real sense of authority over faithful.
Right. I would call it an extraordinary jurisdiction rather than maybe a supplied jurisdiction, because
you said ordinary. I didn't hear you say.
No, extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
Because we understand that it is exercised in a situation that's not normal. Mm-hmm. But when I'm saying extraordinary, I mean something that is constant, not something, because the idea of supplied jurisdiction is somebody comes to you and tells you, I want to go to confession. and then well, some will say the faithful gives you jurisdiction. That's completely false. In order for you to the need of the faithful gives you jurisdiction. No, the jurisdiction comes from God. So God, others will say God will gives you jurisdiction every single time you have to do something, and we've been living something that requires jurisdiction. So we've been living for 60 years in a state of supplied jurisdiction where jurisdiction has been supplied only for individual acts that you have to pose. But I think this is false. I think this is not in line with the teaching of the church. It's a novelty. It's something that's never been considered to be possible in the church. It's a novelty. I think we have to explain the jurisdiction that we have in a different manner as something permanent, because we do act as the permanent shepherds of the church. It's not like I'm walking around and I meet people who see me in my cassock and say, hey, you know what, I want to go to confession. No, I've established a church. I give them the schedule of confession. I tell them when they should go to confession. I give them rules for the sacrament of marriage. I want you to come over and have marriage preparation, and so on and so on. So everything we do is what legitimate shepherds of the church have been doing for so long. So I think the only thing we can explain it as you want. Some have spoken of the universal jurisdiction of bishops in state of necessity. In other words, God gives a bishop a power to rule and govern the whole church, not in the sense of a supreme power, but a power that's not limited to a section of the flock. Some others speak of extraordinary jurisdiction. Call it as you want. All I'm saying is either the Novus Ordo bishops are the legitimate shepherds of the church, or we are the legitimate shepherds of the church. There cannot be, it's against faith, there cannot be a situation where there is no legitimate shepherds in the church anymore. This is against faith. It's been defined very clearly.
I'm curious if or just my thoughts on this is that if it almost seems natural that the different traditional bishops almost set up their own kind, not maybe intentionally, but just maybe it just falls this way, their own jurisdiction, or like almost like or their own like diocese area. For instance, I'm just thinking like you're in the Maritimes,
right?
I would think it would be odd if another like traditional bishop kind of put up shop in your area and like thing, and like started like and bringing priests in that you get what I'm saying. Like it would seem like there must be this sense of,
well,
hey, we're not going to go in your area, we'll come in our area and maybe we can work together. You know what I'm saying?
Well, what we're saying right now is a disorder, a complete disorder. Why? Because bishops they have no desire to gather together and to discuss all of these things. Usually this should be done by the Roman Pontiff, but in the absence of the Roman Pontiff, there should be a will among the bishops to sit down together and to say, hey, you know what? There's no Pope, but we're not going to be each building our small empire and fight against each other and condemn each other. Why don't we sit down together, agree on the situation of the church? Is this see vacant or not? Is it materialitaire? Is it formalitaire? Is it completely or not completely? Okay, agree together, and then is there something we can do to get to find a solution to this crisis of the church? If we agree that there's nothing we can do at the moment, at least at the moment, at the universal level, there's definitely things that we can do at a local level. And one of the thing is, become efficacious in our work. So it's not normal that a priest who lives on one side of the United States takes the plane and goes on the other side of the United States, and vice versa. So there's a lot of effort that's being destroyed there, and infights, scandals to the faithful because they see their shepherd fighting against each other. So to me, yes, it's not without any of us for now claiming, because there's no authority that has done so, but without any of us claiming a territorial jurisdiction, there's definitely a sense that wherever there's a bishop, this priest attaching themselves to him, this faithful attaching themselves to these priests and to this bishop. And there's no reason if somebody calls me from Cincinnati, Ohio, I should be able to tell them, well, go to St. Gertrude the Great, and so on. There should be, but this would become possible, because sometimes it's not possible because of these infights. This would become possible from the moment everybody would put aside his own pride and say, okay, I might not agree on everything with other bishops, but let's gather and speak, because that's how we're going to agree. We're never going to agree together if we don't speak together, if we don't discuss things together.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this. Yeah. Hopefully, I feel like the tribal infighting hopefully gets less and less. Hopefully, but I don't know. I feel like we're all kind of like gathering our own tribes.
It's a normal thing in a way, because there's no head, there's no sovereign pontiff, so obviously the children are going to fight against each other. But it's even worse if everybody stays on his own side and refuses to talk to the others.
One thing in this kind of vein is you sent me the photo of you with Bishop Pivarunas and Father Saunders.
Right.
I was happy to see that. I thought that was nice. Maybe you could be able to talk a little bit about that meeting, or
well, yes. I could just say a few quick words about it. So I wanted to meet. So I'm the one who requested this meeting with Bishop Pivarunas. The main reason is that we have, I've been serving the missions in Quebec, and Father Saunders, who is a priest of the CMRI in Ontario, has started to come at the request of the faithful to visit them as well, and he notified me, etc. But I thought that it was just better and more natural that we, after the Episcopal consecration, that we bishops would discuss together and make sure that we're not fighting against each other on this territory. For me, it's the only place where there's a cross of two non-Unakum communities on the huge territory that I'm covering is Quebec. So I want to make sure that we collaborate with each other. We might keep our differences. I'm not the CMRI. They're not in agreement, I would believe, with everything I think and I say. But we're in agreement on the Catholic faith, and so that Bishop Pivarunas, that's also a consequence of, we could discuss that another time maybe, but that's also a consequence of this role of shepherd, which I see in every bishop today. It is that sometimes, because of the circumstances, because of the present circumstances, some will take a decision on a certain matter. A bishop will take a decision on certain things, which will apply to his flock and to his priest, and the other bishop will take a different decision. This existed in dioceses before. In this diocese, you had to fast on a certain day. In the other diocese, you didn't have to fast on that day. So there's room in the church for some differences on practical things, and with regard to certain aspects of the crisis of the church and certain decisions that must be taken, it seems natural and normal to me that until we get a unity again by getting a sovereign pontiff, that there be differences. And I think so. Working together doesn't mean that we merge together, that we become, the identical on all things. It just means that we respect each other and we're not fighting. We keep our energy to fight against the Novus Ordo and not against each other. That's, I think, very important.
Yeah, I think that's nice. That's why I was happy to see that. I mean, I tend to see him our chapel, so I think it's.
Yeah. So the meeting went well, and we had a good. I thought Bishop Pivarunas was a very good man. He is one of my ancestors in the episcopacy. My lineage come from him, so for me it was like speaking to a grandfather. And he said that it was nice to see a bishop with black hair and not gray hair. So, so. It was good. It was a good meeting, and I hope we can meet again one day. And I wish we could have larger meetings of bishops and maybe address, when we meet two bishops together, we can have discussions together. It's good, but there would need to be a larger gathering of bishops in order to be able to address certain topics that need to be addressed right now, in the church and in our apostolate. How should we do this or that? Can't we agree on certain things?
That'd be neat to see. Just maybe just initial. They're not going to hash it all out at the first meeting, but it'd be kind of good just to get them all to get together and.
Right, people are sometimes whenever we speak of a gathering of bishops, people say, "Oh, they're making a conclave." So it's a delicate situation. But I think outside of that, completely outside of that, there's ways to there's plenty of things that could be discussed and agreed upon without the election of a sovereign pontiff. That's another question. That's a question that could be discussed, but it's not. It doesn't mean that bishops have always gathered in the church and have always talked together and have always seeked unity. And Bishop, that was the answer of Bishop Pivarunas when I asked to meet him. He said, "Well, Bishop Carmona, my consecrating bishop, made me promise on the day of my episcopal consecration to seek unity. So I don't see why I wouldn't want to be in unity with you." So yes, I appreciated that. I think it's a great disposition of mine.
I think that was all we were gonna discuss, Your Excellency. Was there anything I forgot, you think?
No, I think we covered a lot in this meeting. Thank you for having me. It's good. I think I know it's your intention to have clergy members who are less known to be known a bit more. So thank you for doing that. It's very much appreciated. I like my piece, so it's not that I'm looking for exposure, but
Sure.
I think it's good. It's encouraging people. I've got, some messages, many messages after our last interview, and people seem to be encouraged by, these interviews. So I think it's good for everybody. I was saying that even at large, even outside of our community, there's been many people getting in touch with us, and telling us how nice it was to hear of other people they never seen on screen and so on. So I think you're doing a good job.
Actually, if you want to end with a blessing, and we'll end the stream.
Okay.
Or in the video.
Right. Benedictio Dei Omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendat super vos, et maneat semper. Amen. So special blessing on you, Gregory, and your family.
Okay, thank you.